Hello and welcome to Landscape Photography World, the podcast for everyone passionate about landscape photography. I'm Grant Swinburne and I'll be your host in this show, talking to landscape photographers about their motivations, likes and dislikes. Terry Maday, a seasoned video production professional and the owner of Mayday Productions based in Chicago, builds long-term client partnerships while also working as a director and director of photography. He thrives on capturing stunning visuals and moments that blend together to inspire the hearts and minds of the viewer. Whether he's filming in the studio or on location, in the boardroom or the factory floor, Terry brings creativity, versatility and authenticity to every collaboration across OLV, social, branded content, broadcast and long form. Terry shares insights into the importance of telling stories, not just through videos, but across various social media platforms and formats, adapting to different technical requirements like aspect ratios. We talk about Terry's collaboration with Trope, a publishing firm, and their work on his book, Above and Across Chicago, a book celebrating the city's architecture through stunning drone photography. We discuss the nuances of maintaining creativity and business acumen in a competitive industry, the transformative potential of travel, and the future of photography in an increasingly digital world, along with lots more. I hope you enjoy the show. G'day, Terry. Welcome to Landscape Photography World. How are you going?
Nice to be here. Thanks for having me, Grant.
Absolutely wonderful to talk to you today. Thanks for taking the time. Let's get into what you do and why you do it.
I work in video production. I own a small production company based out of Chicago, and we travel the world helping our clients tell stories from finance to manufacturing to aviation to technology to manufacturing. We spend a lot of time just working with companies to help them understand their strategies and stories. And it's become more and more important that it's not just one project, one video. Mm-hmm. It might be one production week. In that week, you're creating assets for .com and of course YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, Pinterest. I mean, the list keeps growing, which is certainly interesting from like a technical perspective, because now you're dealing with all sort of different aspect ratios and everything. So it's really fun. I have been doing this for 30 years and very proud of the work that we've been able to accomplish and work with the clients that we do, and still love what we do, which is really important.
Fantastic. Can I take you back to right at the beginning? How did you get into it and how did you get started?
Yeah, I got into the business. If you ask 10 people, 10 different stories, 100 people, it's just everyone has their sort of journey into the creative field, I think, because it can be a really elusive path for people. My brother is an incredible photographer, and he was a photographer. He's a couple years ahead of me. He was a photographer already established and quickly out of the gate. He graduated college and hit the ground running.
Yeah.
I really didn't even know about it as a real career path, of course, at that age. And I assisted for him briefly. And then I was just taken and with the field, with the collaboration. But it was interesting, like this is and I hope we'll talk a little bit about this, but I'll tease it now, I guess.
Sure.
I work on the video side and I'm a director, but I have a camera in my hand or on my shoulder or on a gimbal or it's a drone. But we're on the motion side, we're always trying to tell stories in sequences, right? It might be wide shot, tight shot, low angle, high angle. And I feel like in photography, it's such a challenge for me to change my mindset to tell a story in one frame or one shot. And I've looked at some of your work and I've seen you be able to convey like emotion or a feeling through one frame. And sometimes it's motion, sometimes it's water, sometimes it's, of course, lighting, composition, and all of it together, which can help convey that story. But I think I struggle as a photographer, and I hope I'm pretty good on the motion side. I'm more comfortable there, that's for sure.
So with your photography, what is it that kind of motivates you? Is it that striving to get better, or is it something that is just there in the background that niggles away in the brain and says, hey, you got to get out there and do this?
The partnership with Trope is a very interesting collaboration for us. So I own Mayday Productions, but I also partner with Trope, which is a publishing firm out of Chicago that creates just beautiful coffee table books. And they have curated a really gorgeous aesthetic. And we create motion assets for them that enhance and extend the stories that are within the books, right?
Sure.
So really prior to that, I didn't work in photography because my brother handled that side of, if we needed a photographer for a client, we would just call my brother. Now with technology being what it is, certainly phones are their whole own discussion, but really I'm talking to you today about the use of drones in the book Above and Across Chicago that we created for Trope. And I guess you're right, though, to answer your question, I do love the challenge of trying to create a story with one single image, and specifically with, in this case, urban photography based in Chicago. And this book is celebrating Chicago's unique architecture and beauty. It's trying to discover, I'm a lifelong Chicagoan, it's trying to discover angles that might surprise people. And that's, as everyone says that, and I think it's really hard to do.
Oh, totally. And sometimes I think being a native of the location can actually be both an advantage and a disadvantage. It's a double-edged sword. You know where the good views are, but everyone else does too. And that's where they go. So you're there or got to go and look for, okay, I know there's this unique landmark here in Sydney. You got the Harbour Bridge, the Opera House, So trying to shoot them in ways or from angles that haven't been shot before is damn hard.
I completely agree. And that's so well said about when you're from that city. I find myself almost, you rely on those places thinking that, well, today's going to be different though, because the train is going to be, but it really isn't. But you do need to actually get out. And I find, of course, trains and Ubers and all these things are great. But when you're walking, it does change the game, because then you actually are, I think, getting to unique places and maybe undiscovered alleys and angles that you wouldn't have seen before. And that's a lot of people talk about that, but I think it's really true.
Yeah. I think from what I've seen of the book, and I haven't seen the whole thing, I've seen some snippets that Trope sent me, for example. You're starting to look at Chicago in a very different way to most people. And as you say, it is finding those unique angles and those different aspects of what might be a very familiar building or a very familiar landmark somewhere in the city. And the shots that I've seen certainly convey that to me anyway. I think the use of the drone in particular is the really interesting part of that. How did you go about doing that? Because I know here in Australia anyway, flying over buildings and around public places and whatever, there's certain restrictions you got to look out for. Did you go looking for permission from the local city, or did you just go out and do it?
That is a very good question. And I will say that, so I am a licensed pilot, and no one really talks about safety, and I'm a nerd when it comes to that. I just feel like you have to prepare, you have to understand where you are. I can't just hop up out of my backpack and we're flying like in a minute. Situational awareness is incredibly important, not only for takeoff, but are you able to land in the same spot?
Yeah.
So that is a huge deal. Now, in terms of permissions, we did not get permissions for this. We flew quite safely and at distance. Buildings are one thing, absolutely for sure. People are another. Absolutely. Never flying close to people. The drone, it is, as someone that's been in the business for this long, there is a camera or a tool for almost every kind of shot now.
Absolutely.
We've got tripod and handheld and gimbals and cinema robots now that are all programmed by computers. Those are all actually incredible, and they have really helped us get different types of shots and create a really modern, look and feel with our work. But it is hard to overestimate what the drone has done for the business. And what it allows you to do when you're standing overlooking a beautiful vista, let's say on a tripod, right?
Yep.
And you've done it for years, I've done it for years. And it's stunning and it's breathtaking, and you're simultaneously inspired by the creativity that you're in, and you're comfortable because you're managing your settings and all these things. But the drone is, you're standing here and you pop up and you can be like, let's look this way. Let's look this way. Let's look down. Let's fly over 400 feet over to here and just see what that looks like, all from one position.
Yeah.
It really is one of the coolest ways to capture a vantage point.
Yeah, absolutely. I think even going back to what you were saying about being on a tripod and whatever, the height that you set your tripod at, the angle that you're setting the head and the camera at makes all the difference to the composition too. And so the variety that you can now get with a drone, I think, is absolutely phenomenal, because you can take it from 2 feet off the ground to 120 feet off the ground, or 400 feet off the ground, which, yeah, obviously there's not many 400-foot tripods around. Yeah.
No, good on you. That's true. But if you're trying to get like square to a building, just as you say, you can just come down a little bit and
Yep.
just tilt up a little bit and you're there. But that's what I mean about the awareness. I do like to fly as much as I can. It's not all the time, as much as I can with what they call visual line of sight. I don't know
Yep.
if you do a lot of drone yourself, but it's, to me, it just gives you that comfort level. Like, how far is that building from me? Certainly you can spin the drone around and look and you get some awareness, but that, or having a second person with you, which we do quite often, is another really safe way to fly.
Yeah, I do have a drone. It's only a fairly recent addition to my photography. The thing I'm most concerned about is that I went cheap. I don't have collision detection, so I got to make sure that I've got eyes on that bird the whole time, because otherwise, yeah, I'm going to lose whatever investment I made. It wasn't a matter. I really don't want to lose it because I've clipped a tree or a bush or a piece of rock or something somewhere.
I think that's smart, though. You made an entry with a low impact, it sounds like, on the financial side, just to get comfortable with it and see if you
Absolutely.
like that format.
Yeah.
And see if you like what that gives you. It may not even be about the quality yet, but certainly the quality of the drones has improved, not only with battery life, which is better for sustained flights and all those things, of course, but it's just the firmware updates of auto exposure bracketing and things like
Yep.
that. In the early days, you couldn't shoot successfully with high contrast scenes. They were just too hard you had to pick a stop and do some magic in post, which you still need to merge and optimize, but it's obviously much better.
Yeah, it's way easier than it used to be. Yeah. I guess you mentioned the storytelling and trying to capture that story in one frame. What sort of things are you trying to express in particular through the Above Chicago work?
That's a good question. Chicago is very well known for its architecture, and I just feel really honest about trying to like break through with frames that surprise people. I think it's really hard. So I feel like maybe I was successful a few times in this book. One in particular where I actually was there for a different shot. We were looking down at an outdoor rooftop, and it was a nice frame, and I just happened to be reframing, and I looked up and I saw these striking pillars on a building that was across the street. I flew really close to the pillars and then looked down the street. So you got like this striking foreground image. Yep. But then I looked south along what's known as a very famous street in Chicago called Michigan Avenue. And honestly, even it surprised me even. And I work downtown, and I'm downtown on daily, weekly, unless we're out of town shooting with clients. And I know this city very well. So that was a really fun exploration that day. So it really is just trying to find new angles, new compositions. Sometimes that's height, sometimes it's light. Hopefully it's a combination of all great things in photography.
Yeah, yeah. Do you think you mentioned the challenge that you have in trying to take it with one frame as opposed to the sequential storytelling in your video? Do you think your video work, though, has helped you or hindered you in doing that?
Has the video side helped me?
Yeah.
No, I would say that it has helped me.
Okay.
Because with video and with stories we work with clients on a variety of projects, and it's not as much as they want us and our talents. And I would say also a big part of the experience is the collaboration. We're really good with client service. We're really good at understanding. So what I'm getting at is, as much as it's about them wanting us or our style, it's about us understanding what they need.
Yeah.
And we're really good at that. And so through that, you learn how to tell stories in a variety of ways. Sure. And for a variety of clients, and for a variety of audiences, and for a variety of length. And as we all know, 15 seconds now is considered not long, but it's not short. it's become a little sweet spot for the work that we're doing. We're creating a lot of 15-second content with success online. So that's really good. And so I think through the variety of stories that we have been involved with over the years, I found myself to be fairly decisive now. If I pop up somewhere with the drone, getting back to this specifically, I can feel it pretty quickly if it's going to be nice.
Yeah,
and it
right.
doesn't always, as sometimes it's not the epic day, and
Yeah.
and that's okay. But you're still trying to create something. So I might spend 5 minutes there as opposed to 30 or 45 to try to get, if you're at an intersection and it's just not working, it's let's move on. Because I feel like I have the confidence now to know either whether you have it or whether it's just not worth it to pursue it.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great skill to take away, because I certainly found earlier on that decisiveness is one of the toughest things to learn. And there was a couple of periods where I'd actually refused to take the camera out of the bag simply because, it's not what I was looking for. It's not what I could, Now I tend to take it out, but I'm much more picky about, okay, so the conditions aren't quite what I want, so I'm going to change what I'm doing because of that. And so I'm then looking for something different to what I might have actually gone to a location for. And so for me, that it is really about learning that skill of making the decision quickly and saying, okay, this is what we're doing now. And if the plan that you had needs to change it.
Yes. And, in video, it's fun. I'm smiling at your answer because I've gone through that as well. And some things clearly aren't worth the camera coming out of the bag. That's true.
Yeah.
But I used to do the same thing. Like my team would be like, "Oh, this is fun." I'd be like, "We're good." And it's not. It sounds that's going to sound bad now that I'm going to say it's not my ego. It's not the ego. I'm just like, that's not worth it. Now, again, back to the motion side of things. That 2 seconds that's not as important might be a really good transition or segue into the next thing.
Yeah.
So in video, you can't shoot enough.
Yeah. I think that's really key. Some of the guys on YouTube, some of the big name photographers, they're always about that B-roll. And yes, you've got to know that B-roll is just as important in segueing between the A spots in that video. And they're the guys that really nailed that ability to take the B-roll and turn it into something that really worked.
That's true. We always say we were creating a presentation today for a client, and they keep talking about interviews, or the A-roll, as you say. And the interviews are incredibly important if you're creating a story that is driven by first-person interviews, right? That is the voice. But the emotion and the context and the depth and the dimension of the story come in when you take someone's voice and then you layer it with those visuals. Now there's music and emotion and pacing, and that's when it comes to life.
And I also think it comes down to, and it seems we're getting shorter and shorter attention spans, but it does come down. There's only so much of watching a talking head talk that people can take. You've got to mix it up a bit, because otherwise they go off and make a cup of tea or whatever instead of sitting there watching the video.
Exactly.
I guess one of the things I'm really interested in is how your cultural and social perspectives have influenced the way that you have perceived your landscape in Chicago. Coming from Chicago, how much has that sort of driven how you're shooting it as opposed to what you're shooting? Because, as you said, you've got Michigan Avenue and you found a unique angle of that. That's great. But I guess I'm interested in the how, not so much the technical stuff, but the way that you're approaching the subject, as opposed to saying, okay, that's the subject, I'm going to line it up here and off we go.
We do so much work with people that I think it comes very naturally for us to automatically put them as the most important thing of the day. And that helps bring a lot of focus. I don't know if that's what you mean, Grant, about culturally, but I think just as part of what we do, as I mentioned before, the experience, it in my mind when I'm on a shoot, yes, I might be focused on schedule or things like that, or running out of light and things like that. But I try not to ever convey that to who we're filming with, even though there's pressure. You're trying to create the right experience for them on the other side of the camera.
Sure.
So that convey in the right way. I think globally, we've shot in China, the UK, We've shot all over Iceland, Jordan, Scotland, Mexico. Anyway, so one thing that actually makes me sad is that when we travel and we say we're from Chicago, the first thing people say is, "Oh man, it's really violent there." And it's like, that's the first thing that comes out of people's mouths. And
They're
it's
talking
like,
about the 1930s or the 1970s,
well,
maybe?
I think they're talking still about the current, just every city has its issues, right?
Yeah.
But we try to carry Chicago with us proudly around the world and represent Chicago in a professional way and responsible to the clients that we're there to help tell their stories. But it is striking that it is like a universal thing that we hear.
Wow.
And it hasn't touched us, thankfully, in terms of any of that. But it's always trying to bring Chicago up in the eyes of whoever we're working with.
Sure.
I don't know. Maybe we cut that out. I don't know if that sounds weird or not.
No.
I don't want to have it be too like one thing.
That's all good. Working with clients, I want to touch on that. You've mentioned that you've worked with clients around the world, but I'm interested in how you maintain your creative vision and your artistic integrity with the demands that clients have. Because, the client will be coming to you to say, I want your specific look, but they might be thinking they're going to get something that they're not. How do you approach those situations?
Love collaboration. I love collaboration on the crew side, and I love collaboration with clients. I like getting to the point where we're considered what they would call trusted partners. And you have those relationships too, where clients don't want to do another shoot with you. I think there is so much talent out there on the still side, on the motion side, and we do a really good job creatively. We do an excellent job technically, and you have to do an excellent job on the service side too.
Absolutely.
And the service side is just the entire experience. Some of our projects might be a month in advance, some at least a month in advance, several months in advance of planning and pre-production and things like that. And you really get to flex all of your skill set, from the boring things like organization and planning and budgeting, which a lot of early creatives perhaps struggle with, or not even struggle, but want to focus only on the creativity, which I wish we could all do. But you can really flex that skill set for clients in a way that shows that we understand your story. Now, once we understand your story, it's time for us to bring our skills into that, and not only skills, but then instincts to it, because clients will look at you. You've had these conversations. Hey, Grant, what do you think? Should we leave here and go to the next location, or are we going to miss it? Or whatever it might be, they're looking to you for your expertise across a myriad of skills. And I really thrive on that. I love that part of the business.
What's the most important thing you've learned through running your business? The
most important thing, that I am maybe a bank and not a production company, meaning not a big bank, but no, it can be really challenging when you have jobs stacked up with a lot of travel and you're spending money out of pocket before you get paid by clients, which is, of course, is the nature of the business, right?
Sure.
You're going to be invoicing and you might be 90 days out or whatever that is. Taking care of your vendors and our subcontractors, aside from waiting for the money from the client, is a big deal. That is a big deal. And we have always taken that very seriously. That creates, not loyalty is not even the right word. It creates friendship, and it creates a relationship that shows I'm serious about, yes, we have fun and all that, of course, but I'm serious about my business. I want you to help us, bring your skill set to us. And it sounds funny, but paying on time and being responsible and communicating to them what the expectations are, and with all the planning, that's one of the biggest things. One of the other key things, I think, is to create your own work on an ongoing basis. That is probably the truest reflection of who you are. And you might see that in music choices or in even story choices. And I think it's not always because you're going to get work from it. It's just purely the joy of the creativity and the experience of it. And perhaps it will lead to work, because when they see work when clients see work that feels different, it just has a really nice, I think, big picture view. Because a lot of our clients want to see the names Sony and Bank of America and some of our big clients, Kohler Company, and some of these global brands that are really doing beautiful work. And we're just lucky enough to be part of that. They need to see those big names, but then they want to see that artistic pursuit in you as well. And I feel like it's always just trying to find that balance.
Yeah. Talking about balance, I guess early on when your team might have been smaller, I don't know how big it was in the early days, but most people start out, it's usually either a one-man band or two, if you're lucky.
Just one.
That's certainly where I still am. How important was it for you then to bring in new people to help you balance stuff? Because when you're on your own, as you're the CEO, you're the chief marketing officer, you're the chief financial officer, and the chief creative, yada, yada, you're all things to all people. How important was it for you then to how quickly to bring people in to help you shed off some of that load?
That is a great question, because I think in the early days, it was not only all me. I thought everything I did was amazing. I'm just going to be honest. And it wasn't. I was learning, but I was doing all the creative things, shooting, editing, and as you say, all the other things. I think quickly I realized, and a lot of this is just back to loving collaboration, which I'm glad this is in my nature, because I learned that my work got better when I added other people that have a very thoughtful, considerate, incredible skill set that not only complements you, it challenges you, truthfully.
Yeah.
And exponentially then, not financially, we could grow, but we could grow because now we had technical skills and creative skills. And it wasn't just, I had an idea, thought it was great, and I went and did it. Now the conversation was, hey, here's an idea. What do you think?
Yeah.
Guess what? It's not so great. Let's refine the idea. Absolutely. And the work is better because of it.
Okay. You mentioned one of the challenges is trying to get that, your pricing, your invoicing, all of the financial stuff right. How did you go about, and do you have a formula now for pricing your work and pricing how you're going to work with people? Because I know with photographers, it's always a struggle. I see what other people are charging, but I don't see myself as quite as well known or as good an artist or whatever as person X. So I can't charge that. But then I also don't want to undercut myself.
For sure. You're always trying to find that right value for
the sweet spot is hard to find. Yeah,
absolutely. We have had success with just asking clients what they want to spend. When they answer, I think that's terrific, because I would prefer, as a business owner, like not even talking as a director or a DP or as like a creative right now, I would rather say, here's the number. We want to work with you. Let's start problem solving the job like today.
Yeah.
Rather than estimate 1, estimate 2, now we're higher. And you're hearing back, and it's, Grant, it's almost on every job. It's not that it's just part of the daily business where you do have to go back and forth to try to understand maybe this priority for them isn't the biggest launch of the year. And so maybe the dollars aren't allocated. It doesn't mean anything about your team or your work or your, I've gotten really good at, it's not about any hurt feelings. It's just sometimes the dollars are there and they're allocated. It's a really high profile project. And if you can attach yourself to it, there will be financial rewards as part of that. I'm not trying to be evasive here on the dollars. We don't.
It's good stuff.
We don't have. So we use a budgeting program called Showbiz.
Okay. Yep.
And it could have, depending on the project, seriously, there could be hundreds of line items, and just based on the complexity of the project. So it's not a formula, but everyone has day rates. Sometimes just a little scope. Sometimes we'll shoot with 65 people and sometimes we'll shoot with 5.
Yep.
And so all those numbers get plugged in, and then our numbers get plugged in. And then we are involved in editorial too, we might be then after a 3-day shoot, we might be involved for 2 more months.
Yeah.
So then those costs go in. So it's gosh, it's that magic number or magic sweet spot of trying to match the number with the job and the opportunity. And here's what I'll say about a project that perhaps doesn't have the number attached to it, but the way I feel about it, and this is not what everyone certainly thinks. And I've heard a lot of people not agree with this, but I think if we're going to take a job under, let's say, the number that we should be at or under our full rate, if we decide to take that job, there's no more apologizing.
Yeah, right.
There's no more. We've jumped in, and we are going to jump in with the same level of collaboration, with the same intensity, with the same love of the game to build our portfolio and collaborate with that client for the next opportunity. Instead of just closing that door and saying, man, they're only at X and we're at, if your ego's hurt, get out.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's just not us, though. We choose to play the game because that will most likely lead to more opportunities.
Yeah, fair enough. What about the old of exposure, getting paid in exposure? I think everyone's done it at least once. Have you done that and regretted it, or are you quite happy with how that went for you?
You mean if someone will say, hey, we'll put your credit at the end of it or something like that? Yeah. Definitely. I've not done that in a long time, but absolutely have done that. And of course, hoping for the biggest launch of the year and our name's on it. And then it doesn't really create that exposure. But what it does create is more experience, more relationships. Maybe someone leaves that place and liked what you did and is at a new company now and perhaps a decision-making capacity or a marketing capacity that could help you. That's what I mean about if you're going to get in, go in with a smile and go in with the love of the game. Even if it's at a reduced price. Now, if that's not your thing, I'm not advocating for that. I'm just saying that has worked for us, and it's also created like satisfaction for the team in terms of maybe that's a really meaningful project to them. It's not full rate and all those things as a business owner, but maybe we're giving back and we're helping a community in Chicago communicate all the beautiful things they're trying to do to serve the community. That's important work.
Yeah. I want to turn back to the personal work, your personal creative stuff. Do you have a favorite spot that sort of keeps calling you back that you've got to go back to and go, yeah, I just haven't nailed it, or I've nailed it, but I want to nail it again? Yeah.
In terms of the Chicago book or?
Oh, yeah, just your personal photography. Is there a spot that you like going back to?
I do love neighborhoods in Chicago. Chicago is famous for being a city of neighborhoods.
Yep.
And so from the lakefront to the south side to the west side and the south side of Chicago, there are so many neighborhoods that are defined culturally by different things in those neighborhoods. And so there might be colorful murals and different ways to express their own personalities in those neighborhoods. That's actually what I would love to shoot more of, because I think so far the work that we've done it's been involved in the icons. And I think that's fun, as we talked about. But it would be fun to explore some of the unknown or lesser known parts of the city.
Yeah.
But then you also wonder, like, the amount of work that's going to take. Is that going to connect with people in the same way?
Yeah, I get that.
I don't know. If there's a diner I guess you would still need the same kinds of things that we're trying to do with the icons, which is beautiful composition, hopefully great light, hopefully some interesting imbalance or balance of things that are in the frame, whether it's cars or people or street lights or things like that. Then I think you'd have it.
Yeah.
So it might be lesser known, but if you're just talking photography, it could still be a beautiful image that would draw you into that lesser known neighborhood.
Yeah, cool. I think one of the things, and I've spoken about this on the podcast a few times with people, particularly people that get into that sort of street side of photography as opposed to your grand vistas and climbing mountains and that sort of thing, particularly in urban environments. I think one of the things that a lot of people don't do as often as they probably should is record what's happening in their own neighborhoods. And some people might just call them a fairly urbane as opposed to urban, but a banal scene as opposed to something that's incredible. It can still be a beautiful image, but it's not a particularly popular subject matter. But one of the important parts about that is you're taking that moment in time, capturing it forever. And when you go back in, 20, 30, 40, 50 years, and people are looking at that image, they're going, oh, wow, that's my street or that's my neighborhood. And they go, that's what it looked like. Doesn't look
right.
like,
Look at
wow, it looks exactly the same.
those everyday moments.
Yeah.
You're not everything, like we talked about, not everything is going to be the shot of a lifetime, but there is obviously beauty in these everyday moments and sometimes really quiet moments. I don't spend a lot of time doing that, but I certainly appreciate the aesthetic.
Yeah. What's the most memorable experience you've had out shooting?
Oh man, that's a tough one. We've had some gifts of filming in Kenya with the Prime Minister. That was a project for GE.com. We've been on the border of Mongolia on the China side, filming for Caterpillar. But well, one of the most memorable experiences would be way back in the day. Actually, after college, I spent 6 months in Australia, and probably not too far from you. You're in New South Wales. I was a couple hours from Tamworth, and then I was on some sheep stations and cattle stations out by Brewarrina, which is further west.
I know
And this is
Brewarrina.
do you? And that's the early days of me owning a video camera. And I was shooting a lot, learning a lot, experiencing a lot. And that led me, I created a short reel kind of from those 6 months there and just met the most unbelievably great people who introduced me to experiences and ranches. I'm from Chicago. I had never experienced that in my life. And to have people take you in such a genuine way and create these experiences and say, hey, I found a friend, they'll take you for 2 weeks. And these guys out, it's not outback, but it's very country out there.
Yeah, far from the outback.
Oh, I made it all the way to Ayers Rock and all the rest. But I spent actual time in Brewarrina and those areas. And that was just so incredibly revealing and fulfilling that the early days of the camera, then I came back and edited, and that led me to my first job. So in a way, that is one of the most memorable experiences along the way. Thank you.
Very pleased it was here that you managed to
man, it was transformative for sure. And lifelong friends from the experience at that.
Fantastic. What about a horror story? Have you had any dramas or difficulties out in the field?
I like to keep drama to a zero. There's always schedule pressure. We have done a lot of work with celebrities, and there's always the preparation is essential. And that really helps you to plan the day as tightly as you can. We found from musicians to athletes to business tycoons, it's as long as you're moving to the next thing actively as a team, and the team understands what we're doing, where we're going, and then I'm communicating, or the client is helping to communicate with our talent, it's okay. So I really don't like, those days are all about the plan in advance so that everything goes smoothly. So I'm sorry to disappoint. I do not have any dramatic story.
That's fine. It's wonderful that you can get the plan and actually make it work. Half the time, if I make a plan, it usually goes out the window as I walk out the door.
And that's the other thing with the truth of the matter. When the plan does change, you and I talked about, with our experience level now, not only the ability to be decisive is a lovely trait at this point, but also just the ability to be calm and the ability when things do change, not when or not if, but when, of course. Either the schedule changes, the talent changes, the light changes, or the client didn't realize until we were in the moment after all the planning that this thing was going to happen. And the ability to be able to roll with that and then be decisive quickly like that is another thing that I actually get a lot of satisfaction out of. Being able to problem solve quickly on your feet, as all of us do, is not an underrated skill set.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to move on to the book a little bit. We talked a little bit about it and what it's about, and I'll certainly be sharing in the promo some of the images that I've got from you for it. I'm interested in the production side of things and working with Trope and how that has actually worked for you, and how much time and planning has gone into actually producing the book. Because it's all well and good. I print books myself, but I'm not trying to sell them to anyone because they're replacing my old photo albums, where you used to slide the shots in. So now you just push a button and they print. I'm interested in that production side and how that has actually worked, and how you mentioned that you already had a relationship with Trope anyway, and then that kind of has led into the book. Less about the relationship there, but more about how you've actually worked with them to do the production.
The team at Trope is constantly thinking about ideas. This is about 2 years in the works.
Yep.
In terms of idea to completion and delivery of the book. And really, it's a matter of them coming up with ideas to put into the pipeline, knowing the timelines that it's going to take to create these kinds of books, because their design aesthetic is just absolutely beautiful. And it takes a long time to not only curate the right list of photographers, but then to pace out the story of what they should look like in a beautiful cadence. So I worked with Trope after Trope collected most of their images, I helped contribute to some areas that they thought needed some love. So we went out and shot some areas of Chicago that helped to complete the story in some of the undiscovered shots up to that point. But it really is a fluid process. They will create multiple versions of the book. At the same time, Trope knows what is going to connect with audiences and perhaps sell. It's not just a series of beautiful pictures, as much as that hurts my heart, but it really is. It's a story and a concept that sells at the book level. So Trope understands that, and when they come and they have an idea, I'm just listening and can't wait to be a part of it.
Yeah, fantastic. What about how that process of putting the words and the images together? Did you work with a writer? Did you come up with the words? Did someone at Trope do that, or was it a bit of all of that?
The Trope team came up with that. And that is part of the design aesthetic in terms of being able to break up the book, not only visually, but story-wise and inspiration-wise as you move through different parts of the book.
Yeah. I want to move on to a little bit about how you think and how you deal with adversity and so forth. Have you ever hit a creative wall? And if so, how did you handle that? Do you have any strategies or tips for people that might be not feeling the love around their photography or their work?
That's a great question. And we've all hit that wall. I feel so lucky that we have a thriving business where we always say, if we have 10 to 15 projects going at any one time, and those are, of course, not back-to-back shoot days, but one's being estimated, one's being invoiced, 3 are being shot, some are in editorial. But if we have that going, the business feels healthy. At the same time, of course, there's ups and downs to it. And you get a string of responses in a row that you're too expensive, or the dates didn't work out, or we needed you this week and you guys aren't available, whatever that is. And that all of a sudden creates a gap. I find that I love momentum, and I try to create momentum. And I know that sounds funny, but I try to, when we're in town, I'm usually in the office by 5:45 in the morning. I live 20 miles away, but I'm up in the morning. I get my workout in. I just start networking with as many people as I can. As a lot of that networking won't
get nowhere.
You might not get responses, or you might get
the way I look at it, it's gone nowhere this week. Maybe next week.
That's right.
Maybe the week after, maybe months or years.
That's exactly. And that's what I was getting to in terms of you're planting seeds and helping to reconnect. I feel like when those times happen, when it gets quieter or we hit like a creative wall, the networking helps at least extend, and we feel like we're doing all the right things.
Yeah.
I think just by retreating and not communicating and just that just doesn't work for me. I have to try to create momentum because it just makes me feel better.
That's fair enough. What do you see as being the biggest challenge facing photographers right now?
There's an avalanche of talent, and
Mhm.
there's the ability for people to have cameras in their pockets is undeniable. Phone cameras have gotten incredible. And
Yep.
for some budgets, that works. So I think that's a real challenge. The way I look at it is continuing to evolve constantly,
Right.
whether that's your style, whether that's your equipment, which I understand is a financial burden for people.
Yep.
That absolutely, it is a continuous investment on our part. Every time I feel good, it's like there's more. There's always more stuff you can buy. But I feel like you have to be open to it, though.
Yeah. Yeah.
You have to be open to the competition. It's always been competitive. It's exponential now.
Yeah.
And truthfully, Grant, there is so much talent out there that this is emphasizing what I mentioned before about we need to be excellent at creative. We need to be excellent at business in terms of understanding strategy and the reasons for the job, the audience for the stories, and we need to be excellent at the technical side of the equation across the board, by the way, from planning to shooting to editing to archiving. We're archiving sometimes up to 20 terabytes a project now, not per project, but it's massive. So there's all that, but the experience of a production and having your client feel good about the experience and the delivery of the finals is paramount.
Yeah, absolutely. Where do you see photography in society, and what do you think its future is?
Man, you got some good questions.
Thank you.
I need them.
I've worked hard
No,
on
this is
them.
great. No, you have. This is really fun. Well, I'm going to talk about Trope for a second in this because the digital side and the social media side of our world is amazing. And the best parts of it, I think, are when we get connected in positive ways and we're inspired by something that we see. And that is a really beautiful thing.
Yeah.
The endless scroll is endless. And I think it changes when you pick up a book.
Very much
I
so.
really do. I really do. I feel like it slows me down. I feel like I appreciate it. I look at it differently. You can touch it and explore it in a different way than you do when you're just scrolling. So I hope that Trope's contribution will help us appreciate beautifully designed books that help take you on a visual journey of what that book is intended to be, whether it's neighborhoods or a city or a curated set of photos that's a coffee shop, whatever that's supposed to be. I think that books can really play an important part of just grounding us.
Yeah, very much. It's a very different experience, as you said, picking up a book full of, as I say, even if they're holiday snapshots, that as opposed to scrolling through your camera roll or whatever, it's a very different experience. And I think it's a combination of the deliberate decision to pick the book up in the first place, but also that feeling of a book, nicely printed pages, the smell, the whole experience is a completely different beast to playing around on your phone or scrolling on your computer screen.
Absolutely. Look at your backdrop right now.
Books have always been a big part of my life, and probably tells this is only part of the collection. There's another room with another set of shelves like this.
Yeah.
These are only mine. My wife's another reader as well.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. Sorry?
She
has creative bones. She's very much at the moment into quilting, but she's done folk art, she's done painting, neat. She's done all sorts of things, knitting, etc., etc. But
that's great.
At the moment, she's doing quilting, and I'm just blown away. I love the fact that I can curl up under one of her quilts.
How neat is that?
Yeah,
that's great. Awesome. Wow. And by the way, do you travel a lot for your work?
I do. I recently retired from full-time work to concentrate on photography, and as part of that, we bought a motorhome. And
fun!
Yeah, so we actually just got back. When was it? Last week, from going up to Hervey Bay and just dropping off where we want to along the coast on the way up, and the same on the way back.
Amazing.
So I'm now going through a month and a half's worth of photos that I took, trying to sort out the gems out of all the chaff that's there.
Now, did you get the motorhome to be able to shoot? It's all kind of part of it, but is it like, is your wife patient enough for you guys to like jump out and shoot for an hour kind of thing?
Yeah, she's very patient
That's
for my
that's
photography.
amazing. That's amazing, man.
She'll even come and join me. Some mornings she'll be tucked up in bed and not want to do it, but she'll come out and she always makes a good lens holder, or
She's a
great assistant sometimes. But no, it's fantastic to just be able to get out and go where you want to go and spend the time that you want to spend there. There's a couple of places on the way up that we revisited on the way back. There was one place that we went and we were there. I think we booked for 3 or 4 nights, and we said, all right, we're going to do another 2 because the weather forecast looks good and we're going to take these shots. So, yeah.
How nice is that? Just the flexibility of it.
Yeah. It's a wonderful experience as well, because we're going to places that we haven't been or haven't visited. We've traveled quite a lot, but we're trying to hit those spots in between where you might fly from Sydney up to the Gold Coast or Sydney up to Cairns. And so we're trying to hit those spots where we've missed out on.
Man, that's a big country, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. At some point, we're going to try and do a lap. We're still... The motorhome's only fairly new, so we're doing shakedowns and making sure that we've got everything we need.
Oh, yeah. Exactly. No, that's smart.
Yeah.
I remember we were on our way to Ayers Rock and there was a flood in I can't remember what river. I'm thinking like, because I heard the guy start saying we're going to have to turn around.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay. And it turned around like it was an 8-hour turnaround to an alternate. It was like, okay, wow, we're really out here now, man. I'm from Chicago. I've never heard of an 8-hour turnaround.
I'll drive an hour and a half for coffee, and that's just across it.
Nice.
Good traffic these days, traffic, huh? But,
God, where are you?
I'm actually in Sydney. Yeah.
Are you?
Yeah.
Amazing. Great city, man.
Yeah, I've lived here most of my life. Spent a bit of time down in Melbourne, but yeah, it's a great place and great for seascaping. There's just so many beaches. I think just the rock pools. I love going and seeing they're man-made. They're mostly built during the 1930s, during the coming out of the Depression and whatever. And there's just along the Sydney beaches alone, and that doesn't include going outside the metropolitan area. There's 35 of those things just dotted along the coast.
Yeah.
No, I still haven't shot all of them.
Wow, that's cool.
Yeah, but it's just a great place to be able to go and do that sort of thing. And
it sure is.
Not far from the Blue Mountains, so there's waterfalls and escarpments and so forth there that I can shoot as well. So
I was in the Blue Mountains at one point. It's a lovely spot.
Yeah, it certainly is. All right, I've only got a couple more questions for you.
Okay.
What do you like to do when you're not shooting or not editing or not being a businessman? What are you doing outside of photography and cinema?
So I am married. We have 4 kids, and family time is the best. Our kids are old now, 27, 25, 24, 22. And we just had a family weekend this weekend. Our youngest college graduate, nice. And those times are the best. If we're traveling as a family or spending any time as a family, that's the go-to if I'm not working.
Yeah. Do you do much traveling? And if so, what are you doing and where are you going?
I am going to, we're going to Montreal and Quebec City here coming up just for vacation. I actually do. I love travel. I love it. Just as you said earlier, you get to see a city in a new way and discover it. And that is so fun. And I'm not carrying 27 cases. And just to clarify, I don't really carry the cases anymore, but at least you're not responsible for those 27.
Yeah, you got to make sure they're checked in and make sure it's not 25 instead of
right. 20. And then when it's just a backpack, I'm like, forgetting some stuff. But it is so fun to be able to travel and just spend family time and have nice dinners together and spend that time. It's great.
Yeah, nice. All right. I'm going to start to wrap up now. Who are the photographers that you think I should be talking to?
You should interview my brother, Tom Mayday.
Yep.
Tom is a photographer based in Chicago. He has a few books of his own that are quite interesting. And he is primarily shoots people. And I think that could be interesting just in terms of dealing with the dynamic of people versus architecture or landscapes and things like that. Sure. It's a fun. He had a book that came out earlier this year on U.S. presidents that lost running for election, which sounds funny. So basically, they shot the statues and the monuments that were created in honor of these people. And the whole point of the whole point of the book is you should try. You should be in the arena. And the book is called In the Arena. So he would be quite interesting. Yeah. And actually, the roster of Trope photographers, I would recommend anybody that you're interested in, if you look at their work or you look at their bio, Trope is really connected globally to a pretty remarkable group of photographers that, I feel humbled and just lucky to be listed among them. They're super talented.
Yeah, fantastic. And thank you for that. I've got one more question, and it's an important one that many of my listeners want to know the answer to. Do you like pineapple on pizza?
I thought this was coming. And you know what? I never really thought about pineapple on a pizza from Chicago, right? I mean, that's one of our things. And
I know if I went into an Italian restaurant there, it'd never happen.
Yeah, exactly. I could do pineapple on pizza thanks to my bride, because she introduced me to that, and wouldn't be my first choice, but I'm open to it.
Yeah. Okay. I'm much the same. If it's there, I'll eat it. If it's not there, I'm not going to order it.
Pizza, right? How bad could it be?
Yeah, exactly. Some people are dead against it, though. They can't get their heads around the sweet and salt sort of thing.
I'm just not that picky.
Fair enough. All right. It's been wonderful getting to know you better, Terry. Thank you for sharing some time with us. Where can people find your work?
Which is Maday Productions. Same on Instagram.
Fantastic.
So thank you, Grant. This was really fun. Great questions. And I just love that you're doing this and trying to celebrate photographers from around the world and the work that we're trying to create and share with people. It's important. And thank you for doing it.
Hey, thank you very much for being a part of it. Very pleased to have you with me.
Until next time.
Thank you.
Hopefully in Australia.
Yeah, definitely. If you're out this way, look me up and we'll go and catch a cold one.
That'd be amazing, man.
Thanks again for listening to Landscape Photography World. I hope you enjoyed the show, and keep listening, because I'll be joined by some great guests in upcoming episodes. You can find my work in this podcast at grantswinburnephotography.com. I'm also on Vero, Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook. I'm Grant Swinburne. Hope to see you out shooting soon.